This is the Rabbis Podcast. Yeah, yeah.
Hello to all of our fabulous listeners out there. Yes, we are back with another episode of the Rabbis Podcast. I am none other than Rabbi Pinchas Landis of Partners Cleveland, and I am here with Rabbi Gamliel Nosson Halevi Spero of Yeshivas Avasator of Cleveland. Rabbi Spero, how you doing today?
Baruch Hashem, doing good, getting closer to Shavuos,
Every day,
counting,
we count
counting
one day
down.
closer.
I was
Yeah,
just thinking
I
about
see
this
you.
morning. I was thinking, the real avodah of the Eimer, right? Svartam Lachem. Actually, some of the Rishonim talk about even counting multiple times per day. Once with a bracha, but really counting throughout the day. Every day is a different meaning. So I was thinking, how many times during the day do I think about the Eimer? Not enough, but I wish I could say like right now, yeah, I'm holding today is the day of Malchus Shabbat. I'm really holding him up, but I'm not really.
You're
So, but
not,
it's nice in the week.
but that's because Rabbi Spero, you're always holding there. Let's face it, you're always holding.
Halavai.
By Malchus Sheba Hod Sheba something. You're always holding by Sheba something. I know
This
you. I
week
know you.
is the week of Yesod, a very big week. Every week is big.
Yeah.
Yesod is a big week. One of the definitions of our Judaism. Is, okay, but anyway, so I
And
had
I
a
said, Rabbi Spero,
thought.
once again, you did not cut off your beard on Lag BaOmer. That's good
Not
to see. I'm glad you
totally.
kept it. Yeah, I'm
I
glad to
would
see you
love
kept it.
the look I really want to have is the true thing is just a mustache. That's what I would love to have. And the guys in yeshiva know. All the guys in yeshiva after like Baimer, they leave mustaches for me. Sometimes they even for the yeshiva trip, they'll leave a mustache. I love mustaches. I wish I had a mustache. If I hadn't gained weight in more recent years, I would probably shave off my beard and just have a nice mustache. But
You're probably like a Raleigh Fingers one, right? You have like the thing
no,
going
not.
up at the end.
I'm
No, you wouldn't do
surprised you
that.
know who Raleigh Fingers is. No, but
You know,
no.
yeah,
Or Sparky Lyle, no. Sparky Lyle. No, regular, nice.
not for regular.
More, Goose Gossage, if you remember who he was, had a nice thick mustache. I'd go for
Yeah.
one of those types.
Geraldo Rivera, who's not running for the Senate, I hear. Um,
I have not heard that name in many, many, many years.
yeah,
He
he
used
was
to be
talking
a
about running
talk
for
show
Port.
host.
He was a talk show host, and he was
And,
talking about running for Portman's seat. So,
oh, really? He used to invite over, like, on the same show, he'd invite over, like, black nationalists and white supremacists, and they would brawl, and it was super exciting. When I
and
was
he once broke his nose because they like threw a chair at
someone
him, and
threw it.
it.
That was one of those shows. Sure, I was like probably 15 years old when that happened. A great, great
Yeah, I was
moment.
like 12. But formative moment of my youth. But anyhow, we did, like you said, Rabbi Spero, we have Shavuos right around the corner. Every day we're getting a little closer, counting up, counting down. Well, we count up because that's how we do it. And what are you looking forward to, Rabbi Spero? I hear that you're very excited once again about the laning of Megillus Rus.
Always
Is that
love Megillus Rus, my favorite sefer of Tanakh. I don't know if you should have a favorite sefer of Tanakh. Should you? I guess so. All sefer of Tanakh are beautiful. Yeah, I think it's good to have a favorite. I love Megillus Rus. It's just it's extremely beautiful, meaningful sefer. I get a lot of service from it. It's very hard for me because it was very hard for me in Eretz Yisrael because where you keep one day, you read Megillus Rus at 6:30 in the morning. So I found that those
Or
years I did
even
not
if
appreciate
you
Russian.
keep 2 days, you still read Megillus Rus on the first day at 6:30 in the morning.
No,
So it's when you're in
right.
Eretz Yisrael,
I'm saying in Eretz Yisrael, yeah, yeah.
yeah, in Eretz
I'm
Yisrael,
saying
even if you keep 2 days, you're hearing
right.
Megillus Rus on the first day.
So in Chutz La'aretz, it's nice that at least I get to hear Rus on the second day when I'm awake, and I get to. It's just an
Yeah.
extremely beautiful safe. The yeshiva's going to a hotel for Shavuos.
Oh yeah.
We're
Wow. Where are
going
you
to the
going?
Bertram Woods Inn in Aurora.
Bird? And you
Yeah, they
didn't
had a
invite me, Rabbi Spero.
we they had a big
I'm available to
sign.
be a scholar in residence, and you didn't even call me. I would have given you a discount.
they had a big sign in the beginning when you walked in, Lezecher, Bertram Woods. And one of the things it talks about was Bertram Woods loved the game of golf. And this, whatever you want to call it, this picture of him with like the Zecher written underneath, that was his defining characteristic. He loved the game of golf. And I was just thinking, imagine a person that may have asked from Shana, and the most you can say about him is that guy loved golf. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. Well, but better, I guess better Bertram Woods and Bertram Russell. Like, if you have a choice of a Bertram, I don't know. Which one would you take
With the
if they were asking you?
philosopher.
Yeah, the philosopher, the good old philosopher. Or I mean, personally, my favorite Bertram is Rabbi Yeshua Bertram from Eretz Yisrael. We should
I know
we
Shul
should name
Bertram.
him.
I haven't seen him
Yeah,
in many years.
we should try and get
By the
him
way,
on the
I just
podcast.
want to give a quick shout out to a new listener. His name is Rabbi Daniel Nozenchuk, a very chashva person, a big coordinator for the OU, and we went to school together. We're old friends, and he listens. And a shout out to him and to Betty Sally, also an old listener. So, okay,
And a big shout out to Mitt Romney, who I heard has started to listen to our podcast because after he was treated the way he was treated in Utah this weekend, he's thinking about becoming Jewish. So
hey,
big shout
Ron,
out to
I'm
him.
not even gonna ask. I don't know. I'm not even gonna ask. Okay,
Okay, let's rock,
so
Russ. We're gonna do a little Russ here. So Russ, what do you have to say about Russ? I got Russ open here. I'm ready to rock. I first of all, I think it's always important to put out to put out there. Anytime you start a discussion, Russ, you have to remind everyone of the historical context because it's there in the beginning of the Megillah, but a lot of people aren't familiar with it. Obviously, as Vivi Shofet Shoftim at the time when the judges are judging Klal Yisrael, and so the time period of the Shoftim is a 400-year time period. This was pretty much smack in the middle, a little towards the second half of the Shoftim when Iv's son Hashofet was the Shofet or became the Shofet. Because he is going to be our Boaz. Boaz's name in our Megillah is Boaz, and Shoftim is Iv's son. And that's where we are, Rabbi Spero. So take it away. What are you thinking about
right,
with
just it's
Rus?
interesting you said that. If you look at Avostar of Nassan, I always found this to be interesting. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, "Moshe Kibbutz Torah Misinai." Then it goes to the Moshe Yeshua leZikenim, Zikenim leNavim, Navim Moshe Lashkas Gadola. It goes. Those are the steps. Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshua ben Nun, Zikenim, Navim, Ashkas Gadola. In Avostar of Nassan, it adds a step, adds the Shaftim. It says Moshe to Yeshua, Yeshua to the Zikanim to the Shaftim. The Shaftim, we said before, was a very unique. We spoke about this idea, the uniqueness of the time of the Shaftim. There was no centralized leadership, and the Gemara, the Ilga Chazal, had to define the time of the Shaftim. It goes back and forth. On the one hand, there was a lot of bad things going on, and due to the lack of leadership, the Gemara says. I'm sorry, the Medrash says. And Yalkut Shemani, what does it mean Shvait HaShaytim? That people judged the judges. No one could accept anybody. There was no leadership. Nobody was able to accept any degree of leadership, which is always a bad thing. But on the other hand, if you think about it, imagine a time period of 369 years. There's no central leadership. You'd figure there'd be tons of terrible stories, terrible situations of prikas oil, of people throwing off the yoke, bloodshed, immorality. It's really not true. At the end of Sefer Shayt, we once discussed this, when these two stories happened, the story of Pesel Micha, Pelegish Begiva and Pesel Micha, right? The story of the concubine in Giva and the story of the Avodah Zarah of Micha. But those are really the two major bad events that happened in this period of 369 years. So in a certain way, it's pretty impressive, this self-governance, right? I don't think any other nation could be thrown together for 370 years without all assorted chieftains. I know you like the word chieftains.
Love
Um,
it.
one of your kids told me you insist on being called the chieftain at your house. Not Tati, not Abba, not Daddy, a chieftain. You would imagine all these different chieftains, you would become many nations, right? In Eretz Yisrael, we know there was 39 Canaanite Malachim, 31 Canaanite kings. Each king was probably, Eretz Yisrael is not a huge place, probably was pretty small, each king. So you can imagine what would have happened here in a typical nation, and especially a nation that has 12 distinct Shvatim, there would be at least 12 breakoffs, and there were no breakoffs during this time, which is an amazing idea. The people stuck together. There was a lot of greatness, but also a lot of bad things happened then. And there was a terrible famine. So I want to say something I just saw over bought down from Sefer HaMasorah.
So was that before I want
Right.
to go to that point just for 1 minute before you jump into your point for
Yes.
Sefer Masorah. But it's
I'm
interesting to
excited, so
think
I'm just
about.
talking a lot, Rabbi Landis, so you have to
No
interrupt
worries,
me
I do
too.
that too. Trust me, trust me. My line of work, I run my mouth. That's what I do. So, but it's interesting. I never thought about this before. That you're talking about the beginning of the sojourn of the Jews in Israel, because I know you like that word sojourn. That the you see that there was a unity here, in spite of the lack of centralized leadership.
Right.
Yet at the end of the sojourn of the Jews in Israel, meaning the time of Churban Bayis Sheni, right? If we're, if just looking at it as the 70 years was elapsed with one, big 900-year period. So at the end, that the issue was splintered groups and sectarianism, and I know you love that word too. So it's interesting that you point out that at the beginning of the sojourn, we did not have a problem with sectarianism, where you think you would, because you had. And by the way, I just
No
want to point out, it
centralized
wasn't that we
leadership.
didn't have centralized leadership. There was definitely one Sanhedrin. There was one Kohen Gadol. There was one Beis Hamikdash. There was no Melech. There was no king.
Right.
But
I
it's not
guess
like it
you could
was
say
totally
there
decentralized
was no centralized authority.
beyond the Sanhedrin, meaning an
I mean, to what,
executive branch, so to speak.
right? To what degree you call the Sanhedrin an authority?
Okay, but I mean, there was a court system that was unified, a
Oh yeah,
unified
for
court
sure that was,
system.
yeah, for sure.
Right, right, and there was a unified religious system. In other words, the Nevi'im at that time were unified, and the Kohen Gadol and the Kahuna was unified.
Right.
Hey, right, I just want to point that out. There wasn't completely Hefker, every shaver for himself.
Right, for sure. I
There was
mean,
the Mishkan was wherever it was. And the Mishkan was in different places, obviously, at different times.
100%.
And for the most
And
part
you
in
can even
Shiloh.
say, the Gemara in Tamura says that they, after Moshe Rabbeinu died, they forgot 300 halachas. So
Right.
you could imagine the chaos that could have ensued with these forgetting of these halachas, right? But no, in fact, the Gemara lists one specific person, the first shayfet, Asniel ben Kenaz, mitoich pilpulo, through his learning. Actually, interestingly, not through prophecy. So what's
Right.
interesting is that even though the Gemara in Zvachim does mention that Yeshua was the king, on the other hand, the time would have been ripe for sure for tons of breakoffs. And you see, there was no the real what's how do you pronounce the word sectarianism? Sectarianism.
Sectarianism.
The real sectarianism really started at the end of the second Beis Hamikdash. The
Right,
Tzdukim
right.
and the
You're
Baitusim.
right. You basically, I don't. Right, in other words, you see it really from the time of the Yavanim, right? The Yavanim are the ones who start sectarianism, because first you have
Right.
you have the Misyabnim, and then they are just reincarnated into the Tzedukim, and at the time of Tzedukim, there's a bunch of other groups, and but you're right. It's really when it's a result, I would say, of lahashkichim Torasecha, the drive of the Greeks to make us forget the Torah. That until that point, we're able to stay fairly unified.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Very good point.
It's interesting
So Sefer Masorah.
if you look in the Mishnah in Menachos, when it goes through the cutting down of the Eimer, right? They would do these, right? I remember the disagreement between the Prushim and the Baitusim. The Baitusim held that it's the first Sunday. I forgot it's before or after Pesach, but the first that Mimachar Shabbos, and they had big disagreements, and the Chachamim actually made big fanfare, right, of going out and making sure everyone saw it. People would invite everyone. They'd see him cutting down to let them know what the right day was. So in other words, there was a real battle for the soul of Klal Yisrael. I love saying that. It sounds
And
so
and by the way, if you look in Megillus Tainus, the reason why Megillus Tainus says we don't have a Tainus in the month of Nisan is because that issue
right.
was resolved in the
That
first
issue
half
was
of the month.
resolved. It became clear. The Gemara brings like 4 or 5 different ways that they clearly resolved that the word Mimachar Shabbos in Parshas Emor, which said 2 times over there, the Shabbos refers to the first day of Pesach, not to a random Shabbos, right? So yeah, so it's interesting. I was just going to side tangent today when we're living in a certain ways an unfortunate generation where there's a lot of a tremendous amount of ziyaf HaTorah, a falsification of Torah. It's interesting. There's no one to do it, but should we have a more centralized role in any mitzvah that we do, which is really based on Torah Sheba'al Peh, which by the way is every single mitzvah in the Torah, as we know. You can't do any mitzvah without it. there should be some, I don't know, I don't know, some emphasis at least that we're doing something that's been done for thousands of years a certain way and not through newfangled ways of doing things. But in any case,
Well, look,
so
along
there's
these lines, as Klal Yisrael came back to Eretz Yisrael, starting after the Spanish expulsion, and then up until today, I mean, the two, there might have been more than two, but there are at least two attempts to restart the Sanhedrin, right? Rav Yaakov Rav,
Maribe
the Rebbe
Rav,
Rav, and the
Napoleon,
Rebbe Rav, and no, I'm blanking on the Rebbe Rav and was the one who wanted it, and the no, the Rebbe Rav
Malbach.
did not want it. The Rebbe Rav was in your what?
Maribe Rav wanted it, the Malbach did not want it.
Right, right, right.
Right.
So you had
But
which was basically, but again, and then Rav Herzog also at the beginning of the modern state.
yeah, but I don't think you can
Yeah, no, I agree.
compare.
Whether you count that or don't count it, what I mean is that I think the sentiment is along the lines of what you're saying, that the Klal Yisrael be'etzim should have a central authority of halacha, a central
Right,
authority of rabbinic leadership, and we don't. And so
right.
therefore, it's really a testament to us how, for example, when we get up tonight and we count the Omer, and we're going to count it basically the same way, Jews ever count basically the same way. Okay, yes, you might say a lamed as opposed to a beis, and I might say beis as opposed to a lamed, whatever your custom is, a le Omer, be Omer, but for the most part, we're all doing the same exact thing across Klal. So it's a beautiful thing without a centralized rabbinic leadership,
Right,
and it's an absolutely
right,
beautiful thing. You know?
right. Agreed. So there's a sefer called Sefer Messiah where it says something fascinating. I never knew this. It says Vayelech Ish two times in Tanakh. Once by Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayelech Ish Beis Levi. It says one, here in Parak Aleph, the first pasuk of Shaif of Rus. Vayibi Mei Shvaita Shaiftim Vayi Rav Be'aretz. And there was a famine in Eretz Yisrael. Vayelech Ish Mi Beis Lechem Yehuda. A man left from Lechem Yehuda. He went to live and stay in Maya. Him and his wife and two sons. Like I was telling the Bacharim, I said, what's the comparison? Elimelech was one of the Gedali Adar, one of the greatest people of the generation. I said, imagine today if you heard someone said to you that Reb Chaim Kanievsky is moving to Qatar with his two sons right now and setting up. People would be shocked. You'd be like, are you serious? Yeah, Reb Chaim Kanievsky is moving to Qatar with his two sons and he's settling there. People would be in a state of shock. And this is mamish what it was. So, what's the sushtel between the pasuk here and the pasuk in Parsha Shmais with Moshe Rabbeinu, referring to Ve'elech Ish Beis Levi, referring to Moshe, referring to referring to
Amram.
Moshe,
Amram.
referring to Amram. I'm sorry,
Amram.
referring to Amram.
Yeah.
Is that just like Amram was a Shem Shemayim? In the end of the day, Elimelech's a very complicated person. He was a great person. He made an error by leaving, but Rus is the story of the birth of Mashiach. Right? That's the story of Rus is about, and who put the story into action? Elimelech. So Elimelech was a
Right.
very great person, and should be remembered as a great person. I always feel is not remembered well enough. Yes, it was a mistake. You know, the Zohar HaKadosh says the reason why he left was because he didn't want to give tzedakah in Eretz Yisrael. So it doesn't mean that like literally someone would come to his door and say, "Hi, can I have $18?" No, you shut the door in his face. Doesn't mean that. What it means was he made a cheshbon that it's time. The time is ripe to bring in Mayav, which maybe we'll digress in a few moments about that. But there was his das was not 100% pure. There was a little shemet saying the reason why I want to get out of here is not only to bring Mayav into Klal Yisrael, but also because I am tired of people bothering me. But that's a little tiny. But the famous story with the Gra and Chaim Volozhiner. Chaim Volozhiner went to the Gra in his lifetime. He discussed with him opening the yeshiva of Volozhin, and the Gra was very cool to the idea. He did not give him encouragement about it. And he went back a couple years later. And a couple years later, another time, they lived obviously in different cities. And he went back to Vilna, and this time the Gra was very warm about it. And the Chaim asked him, why now? He said, before I felt you had other motives, other ulterior motives, which is just human. We all always have ulterior motives. But when he went back this time, it was Lishma. So Elimelech was missing a slight idea of Lishma, but this whole story that we are reading, all the greatness happened because Elimelech. So I think he deserves to be appreciated, right? Elimelech was, the Achlaikis was the older brother of Boaz, or he was the uncle of Boaz. There were four brothers: Elimelech, Salmon, the father of Boaz, Toiv, Planyamoni, and Nami's father.
Right.
Nami's
We don't
father
have a name.
was also a sibling. It never says his name. I
Right.
don't believe.
And some of those other names are just great, like Salman. I don't know why that name has fallen out of usage. It's
Yeah.
just such a great name.
I always
Anyway.
wonder if his great the Shlomo was a great grandson of Solomon. Is it named after him? You don't really see people named after people in Tanakh at all. You never see it, in fact.
Right.
Right? I don't know. One of the many
Shlomo,
unanswered
Shlomo.
questions. But let's discuss, why did Mayav have to come into Klal Yisrael?
So I'll tell you what Reb Bullman's that's all used to say on this, and it might be referenced this before. I don't know, but Reb Bullman said that the path of life, the path of the story of Klal Yisrael, is that we think of ourselves as Avraham, as descendants of Avram Avinu. We're Avraham-esque. We're Ivrim. We're Hebrews. Right? That's what we think of ourselves of. But you see that it wasn't so simple, because there was a process in the formation of Klal Yisrael where Avram Avinu himself was not enough. You needed Avraham. You needed parts of Nachor and parts of Haran. Right, so it almost seems like really it was Terach. What became Klal Yisrael at the
Right.
proto stage? It was Terach, and Avram was pure. Right, everything from Avram was needed in the development of Klal Yisrael. A good amount of Haran was needed, and a little bit of Nachor too. Right, because Sarah comes from Haran, and then the daughters of the eventual other imahos, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, all come from Nachor. So you see, there was a process of filtering out, so to speak, of what was terach to make it what was necessary for Klal Yisrael. And the very last piece of that is Moab, because Moab is right from Lod, right from Haran, right from that lineage. And the story of Rus is collecting the last piece we need to, so to speak, finish the development of Klal Yisrael. Once the development is finished, then we can have David HaMelech, then we can have the Beis HaMikdash, then we can go through that process. So I'm more explaining the what. The Rebbe was really explaining the what. There was something in Terach, intrinsically in Terach, really. I think probably another person we don't give enough credit to. Right? We mentioned them like once in the Haggadah, and then when we read Parshas Bereishis, and that's it. That's all Parshas Noach, at the end of Parshas Noach, and that's it. That's all the mentioning he gets. And we kind of talk like, we talk about him as a no devote Zara, Hayavoseno, and that's Terach. But the way Rav Bowman's explained is what we became needed to be filtered out from there. And Haraya, it wasn't enough just to have, whatever this means, wasn't enough just to have Avram Avinu. We needed this piece of Haran and this piece of Nachor, these pieces from Haran and pieces from Nachor to bring back in. So it's more of a what than a why. I don't have a good why though. What do you say, Rabbi Spero?
I don't. Also, it's a very hard question. I remember one of the first year I went to from Rabbi Shapiro. I used to go Thursday night. I lived in Eretz Yisrael, and I remember this is when I don't know if it was the first year I went to, but it's the first year that really dazzled me. I would just walked out of the room with I'm amazed. And Ramesh spoke about the idea of Maya, of something called Malchus Bli Keser. It's kingship without a crown, and it's the idea of achrayas, of responsibility. The first situation is B'nai Light. They thought the world had ended, so they did a disgusting act. They thought it was. So Ramesh said, we want to bring Mayav into Klal Yisrael, but not completely. Right? Remember, we're not even allowed to marry with Mayav, right? To the males from Mayav. So we want to bring some of the ethos. Like that word?
Nice one. Ethos.
How's it pronounced? Ethos? Ethos? Ethos?
Ethos. It depends. It's like it depends if you say potato or potato. That's really
You want to bring some of the midas of Mayav into Klal Yisrael, the midah of achrayas, particularly, and you see that's one of the running themes throughout this Megillah is the theme of achrayas, of responsibility, the achrayas of Nami, the achrayas of Rus, the achrayas of Bayaz, the idea of responsibility, the motif, if you will. I love when people say "if you will" after a word, as if like, what if I won't? I don't know. It doesn't even make sense to me. But the motif of responsibility is very big, and that could be different. But I've heard another teretz, just that the Rebbe Shalom wanted Mashiach to come from the highest to the lowest, right? From the family of Yehuda, from the family of Nachshon, the highest level of Klal Yisrael, down to the lowest element of the earth. And what defines us as a Jew? Anybody who's makabel the Torah, meaning a person shouldn't look first towards Yichus, right? We're holding down Pirkei Avos, right? It allows a lot of our first this year, where I have just punked a lot of this farm I looked at this year spoke about this idea, the idea of the greatness of Shammai and Avtalion. Right, Shammai and Avtalion were two Gerim. So machlekes, if they were Gerim, or their fathers were Gerim, but they did not have any yichus. In fact, one year the Kohen Gadol insulted them. Right, the Gemara says Numa. The people were walking the Kohen Gadol home. The Kohen Gadol was not chashiv, and they saw Shammai and Avtalion walking. They instinctively ran to Shammai and Avtalion. The Kohen Gadol said to Shammai and Avtalion, meaning descendants of Sancheriv. Does that mean they were from the nations of Sancheriv? Were they from Sancheriv himself? I'm not sure what it means. But they had no yichus. They came from nowhere. And look, Shammai and Avtalion are part of the Messiah of Klal Yisrael. Right? Hillel, the great Hillel, who had Messiah, was from David HaMelech. Hillel himself, I was thinking about this parallel also. Hillel would not say the word hin. Right? He would only say the word in. Because Rabbi couldn't say it. Imagine today, if you met a Rosh Yeshiva up there, gave a shir klali on Sugyas Hanukkah, and he said, yeah, in the Sugya of Hanukkah, everyone would laugh. Why are you saying Hanukkah? He'd say, I say Hanukkah. Well, I could say Hanukkah, but my Rebbe, who's a ger, only says Hanukkah. People would look at him like he was nuts, right? But Hillel would not say the word hin because his Rabbi wouldn't say it. He dafka would say in, right? This is unbelievable. Maybe that's also one of the lessons of Rus, that a person has to know it's not about ashira, it's not about money, it's not about yichus. It's about the person himself, about becoming a great person. So anyway, so I wanted to say that, point out, to give credit to Elimelech, that he made that move, right? It didn't work out exactly the way he thought it would, but he still made the move.
So along those lines, would you say, Rabbi Spero, that Machlon and Kilion were less lishma than Elimelech? Because
that's a great question.
Yeah.
They're barely mentioned. There's a couple of midrash about them. The measure says what's their real names, right? Machlon means like sickness. Kilion means destruction. The names were Yayash and Saraf, right? Why were they called that? Yay, they were Miyash and the Gula. The Chazal are not so complimentary to them. Right. On the other hand, Machlon was married to Rus, and we know that Bayaz did not exactly Yibum. It wasn't a sibling, but
the estate or whatever.
Some of the Mefarshim should call it like a Drabanan Yibum, a Mitzvah Ka'en Yibum, and it was the Shem Achiv. Who's the Shem Achiv is Machlon. So he was married to Rus, and he obviously had some schusim.
But yeah, in Haraya it's not Yibum. I mean, they need this right because it's not Yibum, but he doesn't name the kid Machlon. Isn't it an part of the Mishnah you name the kid after the fight?
Right. The question is what Machlon's real name was.
Okay, then you have it. But it wasn't Oved. That's one thing we know.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe it was.
Let's put it this way.
Okay, could be.
Nowadays, I can type into Bar Ilan or Eitzar Chachma all the mentions of Machlon and Kilion yet, and it never says their name was Oved. I mean, it says Machlon's name was Oved, but
right. Anyhow,
but
it's interesting because I always think about, when I think about Machlon and Kilion, I think that there's a similarity there between Yehuda's two oldest sons, right?
Right.
That I don't know if you ever thought about this. I never saw anything written about it, but there's and that's also the part of the footsteps of Mashiach over there. That you have Aaron Onan, right? Aaron Onan, am I getting? Yeah, Aaron Onan.
Those are the first two
The
sons.
first two of Yehuda who die. And I always think that there must be some parallel between Aaron Onan and Machlon and Kilion. I don't know if you've ever seen anything on that, but it seems that there's just something there that seems to be lining up. Okay, we'll put our research on it.
There's certainly similarities in the story. It comes from, we all know. This is something else that I heard this first time from Rabbi Shapiro, but you look at all the relationships that lead up to Mashiach, from B'nai Light through Yehuda Tamar, through Bayaz and Rus. There's a lot of interesting things happening here.
And Viter, Davin Batsheva, and I'm seeing
exactly right.
Right, and the one, and by the way, the one of the ones I think is never talked about and should be, and I wrote an article about this. I think I sent it to you, but Asalia, like Asalia is the mother Mashiach is in the line there, and it's like they what was her yachos, she's the daughter of Achav, and Yizebel seeming maybe not. I mean, I'm saying it's like it's when you talk about Mashiach, you have up until David HaMelech, but then even from David HaMelech, you have several serious, I don't know, question
But
marks is the right word,
why
but
does Asali have to be the mother of Mashiach?
well, Asalia is the mother of Yehu, who was the next king, and it was the lineage of
Right.
David Melech, the lineage of David and Melech. Oh, you're saying that the Mashiach doesn't have to come from the Malchus Beis Yehuda, it can just come from David?
Mashiach has to come. The Rambam says that Mashiach has to come from David and Shlomo.
Interesting. I never realized that.
That's it.
Okay, good. That answers my question. I was
So,
very okay. I have to go back and edit the article. In the article, I put how this is a big kash. This is one
oh
of the
really?
reasons we have to go like the
Well, you
Meforshim
know
to
what?
say that
It
you.
could be. I'm
I'm
not
familiar
saying
with
like
the
an
Rambam. I don't
authoritative
know. I'm not
answer.
familiar with the Rambam. Yeah.
I know the
I
Rambam
thought
says
that.
that, but
Sorry, right? I thought that's the whole pshat in Sefer Divrei Yamim, that when Ezra wrote Divrei Yamim, one of the reasons he wrote Divrei Yamim was to show the yichus of Zerubbabel and to show that he was miyuchas to the throne so that he could become the king, and then showing I understood that to mean showing the lineage of Mashiach, but you're
you know
saying that's
what?
just
It's
absolutely
very
wrong.
possible. No, I'm not saying that. Meaning it could be at that time. The assumption would be that they would pick as a melech, right? In the beginning of Bayis Sheni, when they remember, it's only the interruption between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni we know is only 70 years. So it
Right.
could be at that time it was assumed it would be. No, I think what you're saying is good. It could be nowadays. The Rambam is writing, obviously, the Rambam is writing 1,400
1,000 years
years
later.
after that, and
Right.
we're
Right.
2,400 years after that. So yeah, so it could be.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's a good question. You're saying but that would answer that for me, because I always say that there's a whole machlokas on if Izeva was Jewish or not, and
Right.
and and either you have to say that she was Jewish, or you have to say that she was not Asalia's mother, because you
Right.
couldn't say both.
Right.
I mean, even without
100%. Yeah.
Mashiach, because then you'd have a Melech of Yehuda who wasn't Jewish. So even forget about
Right. It's a
Mashiach for a
fact.
minute. You have to say
Izebel's
either she was
mother.
Jewish. Right. Either she was Jewish,
No,
or Asalia or she was not Asalia was not her mother. Right.
right.
But
The
anyways,
only
that's
thing
far
left of Izebel, right, we don't know what's the only thing left of Izebel after she died. If she fell out the
on her
window and all these
hands.
things happened to her.
Yeah.
Her hands.
Yeah.
Why? She would clap for Kalas when Kalas walked by.
Yeah.
I always
Amazing.
found that measure so strange. That Maimer Chazal so strange. This
Yeah.
woman, she's a very bad woman, a real, much worse than Achav. Achav was a
Yeah.
bad person.
Now,
Izebel
Achav
was worse.
had some like at least redeeming qualities here and there. He did tshuva for a
Right,
little bit. He had some redeeming
right.
qualities.
Izebel had zero redeeming qualities, but
Okay.
then but her hands didn't get destroyed because she would clap for Kalas. I always found that to be a very,
Yeah.
I guess
And
so. Look,
by the way, speaking about, I know we're going a little off the tangent, off tangent here, on a tangent here, Rabbi Spero, but I've noticed that there's not been a new episode of the Navi podcast in a long time.
see, now you're
That's
making me feel bad.
I am doing this on
And
the air so that we can talk about this. That we want to make sure that's coming back, okay, Rabbi Spero, because that
I don't
you're
know what
long.
happened to me. I was so good till Sefer Yeshaya and Nevi'im Achronim.
Yishai is
I
a
don't know.
hard
I
state for
got
the States. I'll help you out here, Rabbi Spiro. Navim Achronim are very difficult. I think we talked about it before, that I was trying to do my daily nachazar, and I was trying to do it chronologically, and that basically becomes impossible with Treyasar, because Treyasar, we don't know the chronology of
it's
Treyasar.
not
It's
even
not
known
possible,
when all the Nevi'im lived there, right?
Like I was going to learn Avadia at the time of Elio Navi, and I was
Achav,
going to learn
right?
Yonah at the time of Elisha, and all that. But it's like a few of them we know, but a few of them we just have no clue. So it's like
Right.
there went that. But so I'm just going
Yes, I got to
and
get back into it. All right, Landis, thank you for giving me the musser. I'm
man.
gonna
But
cry
anyway,
after
back
this
to back to but
podcast
you're
is
right.
over.
We talk about the lineage of Mashiach, but at least for sure, assuming this Rambam is right, like the Rambam, that up and through Dov and Shlomo, it's very murky waters, right? And
Right.
and like you said them all, I think. Or you said most of them. You said Lot and his daughter. You said Dov and Bathsheba. We said Yehuda and Tamar. We said Boaz and Rus. This is skeletons in the closet, as we would say, Rabbi Spero.
But you know what? What does the Gemara tell us in Yuma? What was the chesaron of Shaul HaMelech?
didn't have a kupa shel shrotzim.
Didn't have a
Exactly.
kupas ratzim.
Didn't have skeletons in the closet or a box of rats. Right? I don't
I
know why
think
we
you should know. I think there's a mila, right? I really think there's a mila of a person who has, there used to be, I forgot which company it was, like one of the car rental companies, like Avis, we're number 2 and we try harder. I don't remember who had one of them had OJ Simpson running through the airport. I don't know if it was Avis or not. But the idea of when you're not on top, a person on top has that nature, he could feel even, I don't need Durban Shalom. Right? I'm here on my own merits.
Right.
So
And this is Pshat in the famous Gemara at the end of Kedushin of Tosha Rofim Gehenna, that the best of doctors
right.
go to hell.
The
Why
arrogance,
do
right?
go to hell? Because the best of doctors think they don't need the Rabbana Shalom, right? They think that they're in charge.
Right.
Like he said, right? I did this all myself. Right?
So let's go a little further, Russ.
But you're right. But that's why when we talk about Malchus, and especially the Malchus of Klal Yisrael, that concept of why Shaul was not the quote unquote Melech Yisrael was because he did not have the Kupa Shel Shratzim. He had a clean pedigree.
Perfect.
I know you like that word too, right?
Right. Shaul Melech was like mamish. You look at this forum about him. He was mamish perfect in every way.
Exactly.
And that was like a hindrance.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, you have David HaMelech, who, and we didn't even mention the whole thing with Moavi v'lo Moavis, right? That whole part, and the hard to understand Chida, where it says they thought David was a mamzer. You got so many things over here that he was the ultimate
and look at
carrier.
Shmuel Hanavi. It's brought down. I mean, the Bach says this right in the beginning of the Sefer Meshav Nefesh on Megillas Rus. Shmuel Hanavi wrote Megillas Rus specifically as like a halacha tshuva, to resolve doubts about David's yichus, because Bezdin had decided. But even years later, right? It says in the Gemara, it says that Doeg was saying that was saying in the base medrash, well, as we'll end off at this point, it's an interesting dialogue. It says that Doeg was arguing with Avner. So Doeg said to Avner, it's a Moavi can't come to the klal. So Avner said back, no, it's a Moavi, not Moavia. So Avner said back to Doeg. I'm sorry, I'm getting over. Let's start that over. Doeg and Avner were arguing in this medrash about whether a Moavia can come into Klal Yisrael. So Avner said she is allowed to, just not a male from Moav. So Doeg said back to Avner, if that's the case, that would also mean that a mitzvah is allowed to come into Klal Yisrael, female mitzvah, which is not the case. So, and Avner didn't have an answer. So the Medrash says that Avner, it's the Gemara in Yevamis, but the Medrash has a little bit of an addendum to it. So Avner then went back to Shmuel, his Rabbi, Shmuel Navi, and he told Shmuel Navi what Doeg said. And so Shmuel Navi said to him, Doeg minhu. Doeg's not bikaris, meaning, it's interesting. He doesn't, that's a very interesting way of like result. Like you don't have to worry about what Doeg said, but meaning people even, what is it? Probably 100 years later, or I don't know how many years later it was, but 75 years later, whatever it was, people were arguing this point. It was not a resolved issue. So okay, maybe we'll break here with a lot more to say. Maybe we'll have to do Rus throughout the whole summer, like a series of Rus.
Or hey, at least until Shavuos. If nothing else, because look, how far do we get? We got 3 lines in, right?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful.
We can change the name and call it the Rabbis Podcast. By the way, I recommend everyone get the Sefer Rabbi Lapiansky, Seeds of Redemption.
Check that out. Well,
It's
but
phenomenal.
It makes sense because Rus is really where we got our start. Because this is our third. We're coming up on our 3rd anniversary of the Rabbis Podcast. Right. We all know we started it, after Mindy's Patira, and we just had the 3rd yard site. And it makes sense that very first episode, 106 episodes ago, whatever it was all about Megillas Rus. So it makes sense that we speak about it because that's where we got our beginnings. That's our very humble beginnings, Rabbi Spero. So
we've said a lot of cliches today.
We're very cliche-ish. Anyhow, we want to thank you all for listening. Please take a moment and share this with a friend. Leave us a positive review. Help us get the message out there because we want this to be the most popular Jewish podcast in the world, and we can only do it with your help. Thank you all for listening, and we can't wait to talk to you more